All right, we're getting ready to go here. Well, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Bridges Conversations. My name is Steve Givens. I'm the executive director of the Bridges Foundation in St. Louis. We are an organization that for the past 35 years has offered and led people through the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius Loyola in its 19th annotation form, which is often referred to as the retreat in everyday life. So today we are joined by Christine Marie Eberle. She's a Philadelphia-based author of 3 books on Ignatian spirituality. She's a longtime campus minister before that. Her most recent book is called Finding God Along the Way, Wisdom for the Camino for Life at Home, published just this past January by Paraclete Press. It's a book that tells the story of her 2022 pilgrimage along the Ignatian Way, the Ignatian Camino in Spain, in the company of a group of others whose average age was 67, kind of under the auspices of the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, which we can talk a little bit about too. So, first of all, welcome aboard, Christine. How are you today?
Thank you, Steve. I am absolutely delighted to be here.
Good. Very good. Well, let's start kind of as we always do here on this broadcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your upbringing, your family of origin, a little bit about your education, and through that how you became kind of engaged with Ignatian spirituality and the exercises.
Sure. So I'm a Philly girl, born and bred, a very traditional Catholic family, kind of Catholic plus. My dad had been in seminary before he came out and then met my mom. My mother and my godmother taught high school theology. And I went to St. Joe's University, fine Jesuit institution, as an English major. But campus ministry pretty quickly captured my imagination and opened me up to a whole new understanding of my relationship with God. And that led me to pick up theology as a double major and to get my master's in pastoral ministry at Boston College, another fine Jesuit university, and then to work as a campus minister in higher ed for 26 years.
And you did that where?
First at the Newman Center that served Westchester University in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, and then as director of campus ministry at Gwynedd Mercy University, which is sponsored by the Sisters of Mercy.
Very nice. Very nice. You seem to be finding God in your books. I noticed your books are called Finding God in Ordinary Time and Finding God Abiding, being your 2 previous books to Finding God Along the Way. That's a common idea for those of us engaged in Ignatian spirituality, this idea of finding God in all things. It rolls off our tongues pretty easily, but it's also a challenge. So can you talk just a little bit about how that theme kind of began to develop in your writing?
Sure. Well, I mean, as you say, it's common language for us. So it was a sort of intentional way to immediately catch the attention of anybody who speaks Ignatian without being mysterious or off-putting to someone who does not, which is why I didn't call it like a colloquy along the way.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And the story of how it got started is actually kind of funny, and I'll try to tell the short version, which is that when I was working on my first book, the original title was going to be Finding God in Advent, because I knew that I wanted to do 4 weeks of daily meditations. I knew I needed to find a way to market it. Advent is 4 weeks. Everybody likes a nice little Advent devotional. So that seemed like genius. But I went on a writer's retreat that was not a religious retreat, though the people gathered were a very interfaith group. And as I gave my pitch and read a couple samples, they said, oh, no, this is not an Advent resource. And I said, what do you people know about Advent resources? And they said, we know that they live in little Catholic bookstores where people like us will never find them.
Mm.
And we want it to be more generally available. And I joked, well, then what am I going to call it? Finding God in Ordinary Time? And it stuck. So watch what you joke about.
Yeah, right.
And I may need to wrap up the series with 3 because it could get old. But it is a way to just sort of signal where we're headed.
Right, right. We have a couple viewers with us today. If you guys have any questions as we go along, just pop those into the comment section right there on Facebook, and we'll get to them as we can. Well, let's shift to the subject of your newest book, Wisdom from the Camino for Life at Home. Finding God Along the Way is the title of it. The subtitle being Wisdom for the Camino for Life at Home. First of all, for those who may not be familiar with the Ignatian Camino, or maybe getting it confused with the Camino de Santiago, tell us a little bit about what this is, where it is,
Sure.
and how you got drawn into it.
Yeah. So when people say the Camino, invariably they mean the Camino de Santiago, which is a far more ancient route than the Camino Ignaciano. This Camino goes from the birthplace of Ignatius Loyola in Azpeitia, in the Basque mountains of Spain, southeast down to Montserrat, and then Manresa, and finally on to Barcelona. It traces the route that he himself took when, after his recovery from his cannonball injury and the sort of initial seeds of his conversion, he went on a pilgrimage to Our Lady of Montserrat en route to Rome and the Holy Land. So we followed the first half of his pilgrimage, and the route has been marked out by Father Jose Iriberri, S.J. He is the director of the Office of the Ignatian Camino, and the Jesuits really began promoting this Camino as we approached the 500th anniversary of the cannonball.
Mm-hmm.
And so more and more people have begun doing that walk, which actually crosses the Camino de Santiago at a couple points, leading many people to ask if we were lost because we appeared to be going the wrong way.
Nice. Finding God Along the Way is the book is about the walk itself. It is the story of your journey with this band of pilgrims. So in that sense, it's a bit of a travelogue. It's a bit of a guide for how one goes about this. But it is, of course, it's much bigger and much broader than that. It's a pilgrimage, which is the word you use so often in that. And I was struck by 2 notions, and I'm going to have you read this a little bit later. But this 2 ideas that you write near the end of the book that you quote others saying: pilgrimage is life, and pilgrimage is a journey undertaken in the light of a story. And so I wonder if you could talk just a little bit first about what it means to be on pilgrimage, and how is this different from taking a long walk in the woods,
Right. Well, yes. So you can take a long walk in the woods and not be on pilgrimage. You can go visit a lot of churches and not be on pilgrimage. You could just be having some spiritual tourism. A pilgrimage is a journey undertaken in the light of a story. There is a destination, and for us, it was these places in the life of Ignatius. I like to say that pilgrimage is about both the where and the how of the journey. We have our eyes on the prize. There is a place we are headed, and we know where that is. But most of our attention, as we head in that direction, most of our attention is on the path as it unfolds before us. It's moving with mindfulness and intentionality. It is being very attentive to our surroundings, the people we are encountering, the God that we are encountering at work in us. And it is also about traveling lightly. literally and metaphorically.
Mm.
On my Camino, one of the things I discovered was that the most veteran pilgrims had the least luggage.
Mm.
And the newbies, like myself, were dragging these impossible suitcases filled with contingencies. Learning to travel lightly, literally and metaphorically, is a very important part of being
Yeah.
on pilgrimage.
Yeah. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the book, or what drew me into the book, is right away you began addressing some of the fears, some of the worries, all the things that I would have thought of long and hard about before I would have decided not to do this. You know, are my 65, now you're a little younger than me, but are my 65-year-old legs really going to do this? And what about blisters? And what if I get sick? And what if, and what if, and what if? You did a beautiful job of kind of addressing those things. Can you talk a little bit about the worries and that you bring to something like this?
Sure. And let me just back up and say, you mentioned the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, IVC, earlier, but it is worth just taking a beat to say, so IVC matches people 50 and better, some much better, in long-term volunteer placements with organizations who need their skills and could not possibly afford them, and then supports those service corps members with a program of spiritual formation in community. So I've been involved with IVC in a number of ways, and the idea to walk the Ignatian Camino with an IVC group was part of their 25th anniversary celebration. Unfortunately, their 25th anniversary fell in 2020.
Mm.
And so the pilgrimage, as we envisioned it, wound up getting postponed 3 times and happening 2 years and 1 month after we first were supposed to go. So with that said, that gave me plenty of time, too much time, one might say, to worry and try to prepare. And it was, it was all the things, as you say, like mine were 57-year-old legs, but, like, how do I find the right shoes? And for me, it was all those little things like coffee. I've been drinking a cup of coffee first thing every morning since I was in 8th grade. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Leaving my coffee up to chance was not an option as far as I was concerned. What else did I need to sleep well? And, people keep talking about needing to find the right socks and the right shoes, and just all the worries were about the physical uncertainties, none of which was about the heart of the Camino, obviously. But in my first week on the pilgrimage, week or two, like, that ran me up against all those hard edges of, things that were outside my comfort zone. And I feel like I spent the first half of the Camino just really trying to get through and past all that stuff. And then finally got into the groove in about week 3.
Yeah, I think, this is a story of the struggle of doing something like this as a person of a certain age, surrounded by people who are even older, and, learning to, and again, I think this is something I really appreciate about the book. It is about learning to face our limitations. It's about learning to accept help. And it's even about learning to take shortcuts and easier ways when they're offered to us, right? So I think, again, a big part of this book is not just a travel log about the Camino, but as the subtitle of your book states, what's the wisdom, and what are we taking home with us? And so for those who may never walk the Camino but want to read your book, what's the message, and what's the takeaway here?
Right. And Steve, I wrote this book for people who would never walk the Camino. I mean, if they do, that's great. But I recognize what an incredible privilege it was to be able to walk away from my life for a month. There's all kinds of reasons why people might not be able to do that. And the world doesn't need another guide to the Ignatian Camino. There are excellent ones out there. 2 of them are written by Father Jose himself. I really wanted this to be for people who want to live their life with the heart of a pilgrim. In many cases, that might be people of a certain age, who are beginning to realize that time is finite, who might be in the autumn of life, and who really want to be able to do that more deliberately. Some of the lessons, in terms of like the hard lessons that are coming home, some of the lessons that I learned would not have been possible if I had been thoroughly prepared. If I had been really fit and
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 if you had broken in those boots,
yeah,
which
and if I had
right,
shoes that really fit, I wouldn't have struggled so much. I wouldn't have had to accept so much help. Um, I literally carry a slip of fortune cookie wisdom in my cell phone that says, "We learn little from success, but much from failure."
Mm.
So there was a moment at about midpoint on the Camino where I was not going to be able to walk the next day. I had 7 what I called named blisters,
Mm.
like named storms. Um, and Father Jose agreed much better that my husband and I, because I got most blisters, he got biggest blister
Mm.
at the same time. So he agreed we were going to take the train to Zaragoza the next day. And the night before, I was so upset. And I emailed my spiritual director and I said, I failed to prepare well. And now I am at risk of failing the Camino.
Mm.
God bless her. She wrote back immediately. So when I woke up the next morning, it was to an email that said, "You cannot fail the Camino if you regard it as a spiritual journey. And number 2, let go of all the hopes and dreams and imaginings that preceded the reality of what is happening, and open yourself to the grace that is being offered through the reality of what is happening." Steve, that is wisdom for every day. Because we have hopes and dreams and imaginings for what's going to happen every blessed day. We put our feet on the floor in the morning. We think we know what's going to happen. We could be mostly right or we could be dead wrong.
Mm.
And because every day is a swing around a blind corner. And so our ability to seek and encounter God in whatever is coming our way, not despite what is happening, but through what is happening. See, I was an English major, and it really is all about the prepositions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the heart of Ignatian spirituality, and walking with God wherever we are.
Yeah, I think those listening to this who, again, have no desire to ever walk the Camino will hear in your words, the echoes of the spiritual exercises themselves, right? It is about meeting our limitations. It's about letting go of all the things that we think we need that we don't really need. And so those 2 journeys of the spiritual exercises and the Camino are beautifully portrayed throughout your book. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we, although we did not make the 19th as we walked, we did pray with the themes from the 4 weeks of the exercises,
Mm-hmm.
which is why a lot of that material sort of sneaks its way into the book as well.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about kind of interaction with this book. First of all, in true Ignatian form, I think you do a great job of giving a few good questions, a few small questions at the end of each chapter. And also, so you talk a little bit about that if you want. The other thing that you mentioned to me is there's now kind of a Lenten supplement to the book that's available through the Paraclete Press website. So can you talk a little bit about kind of engagement with the book and in those 2 different ways?
Sure. So I think, the book obviously can be devoured in a sitting if one wishes. Though it always cracks me up when somebody says, "I read your book last night." Do you know how long it took me to write that thing?
Yeah, right. That's right.
But so it can be devoured, and there is a sense of what happened, because it does follow the narrative thread from beginning to end. But it is better consumed slowly because, again, my desire is always to have people connecting with their own experience, not just with mine. The book has been out about 7 weeks now, and the most consistent piece of feedback I have gotten is that people are loving the questions
Mm.
because it really is allowing them, if they allow themselves, to think about their own life and to make the connections. Somebody just said to me the other day, what I love about your book is that at no point did I ever think, oh my God, she's talking about herself again.
Mhm.
Should be like, you give us just enough about you, and then you turn us back on us. So that's in the book in general. And then because the book was coming out in mid-January and Lent was on the horizon, I did a little math and realized that if a person started on the Monday before Ash Wednesday and went to Easter Monday, you could read one chapter a day, read and pray with one chapter a day. So I developed a resource that aligns those chapters with the readings and the themes of Lent, and provides, therefore, like 50 more reflection prompts. So if you can't get enough of the ones in the book, there's more where that came from. And I have heard already that people are beginning to pray along with it, even in the early days of the season, and are very much appreciating it. And I am praying with it and appreciating it because it's lovely to only read one chapter at a time of my own writing,
Right.
and decide what's like the one little turn of phrase that I really want to dig into today.
Yeah. And that's certainly how I digested this, and it's actually my favorite way to read the spiritual books. I it's part of my daily prayer routine to even when I want to read on, to make myself stop so that I'm able to digest a little bit.
Yeah.
So we actually have a question here from my friend and yours, Ron Knapp. I can't put his whole question up because he wrote too long of a question. But
No, Ron wrote a long
Ron, I
question.
know, yeah. He says, I read your book within 2 weeks of receiving it on its publication date. I dog-eared and marked up dozens of pages. I'm now reading it daily through Lent with your discussion guide. Just to share one gift of your reflections to me, your spiritual director's wisdom for you yours, Christine, your spiritual director's wisdom to you that divine grace is not prepackaged and stored up in our soul. Grace meets us as we journey through life. Can you share a little bit about how you've embraced that truth, especially now in your life at home?
Yeah.
So that's the
This,
question, and at the end of Ron's really good comment there.
thanks, Ron. There's a great Anne Lamott quote that didn't make it into the book, but that says, grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us where it found us.
Mm,
I love that.
yeah.
But Susan's line about grace came during our last direction session before I left for the Camino. And I was rattling through all the what ifs in my mind. And Susan, for a long time, has said most sentences that begin with the words "what if" are probably from the evil spirit. So like, that I've incorporated for a long time. But she said, the grace is going to be there. It's going to be there, but it is not going to be there until you need it. Like it will arise in the moment of need, because that's how grace works. And it was true on the Camino, and I think it is true in life. I mean, to use sort of a ridiculous example, I also cantor for my parish, and I can't tell you how often I cannot summon to mind what my next note or line or song is going to be until the piano starts to play.
Mm.
If the priest is praying something and I'm trying to figure out what my next line is, nope, it's not coming. Like in the moment, when it's time, it will come.
Yeah.
So just really trying to, it also happens. I do one of the things we didn't talk about is I do a lot of retreat work now. I am a freelance me. I often joke, let me come be me for you for a little while. And part of the grace on the far side of the Camino has been really approaching my material so much more lightly, recognizing that the grace is not only in whatever I have prepared, but in what is happening in the room at the moment. What is happening in the hearts of the people in front of me? What's happening in my own spirit? And to just trust that that's going to be there when it's needed has been a little scary and mostly very good.
Yeah, thank you.
So
We're kind of running a little not out of time because I can do this as long as I want, really, but at least to our scheduled time. I was really struck by some of your words near the end of the book, and I just wondered if you might read those for folks,
oh,
and we'll kind of end with that and see if there's any more questions.
sure. And you did tell me what to read, so
Yeah, there you go.
what you'd like me to read, so I shall. And this is from the postamble. We had a preamble, so of course we also had a postamble section called "Pilgrimage is Life." Throughout our journey, we often heard Father Jose exclaim, "Pilgrimage is life." Those three words were the key to making the Camino a truly transformative experience, and thus a never-ending one. Let me return for a moment to the words of Paul Eli that I quoted at the beginning of this book. A pilgrimage is a journey undertaken in the light of a story. When I decided to walk the Ignatian Camino, I thought the story was the journey Ignatius had made 500 years ago. I wanted to traverse the miles he had traveled and experience the places that had been so significant to him. On the far side, however, I see that the real story was not about the physical miles, but rather the interior distance Ignatius traveled, releasing his attachments to the worldly ideals that had held him bound, and learning to dwell in intimate communion with the God of his heart. Ironically, although our steps followed his journey from Loyola, Inigo did not put on his pilgrim's robe until he left Montserrat for Manresa. Everything leading up to that, all those miles we walked, was for him preparation for the real pilgrimage, the rest of his life. And so it could be for us. Pilgrimage is life. Life can be a pilgrimage if we live it deliberately. To be a pilgrim in ordinary life is to realize that we step out each day into the unknown. Who will we encounter? How will we be stretched or challenged? What blessing or loss will come our way? Those circumstantial unknowns open the door of our hearts to deeper questions. Will we be present and attentive? Do we trust that we will find God in the midst of it all? Can we, in my spiritual director's words, let go of all the hopes and musings and imaginings that preceded the reality of what is happening and open ourselves to the grace being offered through the reality of what is happening? Spanish poet Antonio Machado famously wrote, "Caminante, no hay camino, se hace camino al andar." Traveler, there is no road. You make your own path as you walk. If we resolve to greet each day with a pilgrim's heart, the pilgrimage has no end.
Thank you very much for that. Let me, as we wrap up here, I just want to thank for those who have tuned in and remind you and those who might view this afterwards that this will soon be available as a podcast that you can listen to as you walk or as you drive. So check out the Bridges website. There's information there how to sign up for our podcasts. Christine Eberle, thank you very much for your time and for this beautiful book. Wanted to also mention before we sign off here that next month we'll be gathering here on Friday, April 11th with my friend Carol Ackles from the Ignatian Spirituality Institute in Dallas. We'll be discussing a very special conference that they're holding down in Dallas this summer called the Ignatian Spirituality Conference. The Montserrat Retreat House is right on Lake Dallas in Dallas. It's a beautiful setting, a beautiful facility and always good company. So think about that for anyone looking for maybe a short summer trip, but we'll be talking about that more next time. All right. Thank you. Christine, anything you want to say in closing?
The only other thing I was going to mention is that I did record this as an audiobook. It is not quite out yet. They're still doing the behind the scenes magic, but keep your eye on the Paraclete Press website. And as I said, I am a freelance me. So if anybody wants a retreat in person or via Zoom, or wants to do this for a book club and wants me to pop in, very happy to do that.
That's great. I didn't, I think I forgot to put up your own website, but it is what? What is your website?
It's ChristineMarieEberle.com with hyphens in between all the parts of my name. If people Google me, they can find me.
I'm sure you're easily findable. So, all right. Well, thanks again for your time. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Christine, if you hold on just a minute, I'll be with you.
Thanks, Steve.